The sound of an engine revving made me turn. Tyler's red sports car, bought with my retirement money, though I didn't know it then, barreled across the lawn straight toward me. My arthritic knees locked. My heart hammered against my ribs. The car screeched to a halt inches from my legs, the impact of the sudden stop throwing me off balance. I collapsed onto the damp grass, the breath knocked from my lungs. Laughter erupted from the vehicle. Tyler and 3 friends, phones raised, capturing my humiliation. "Too slow, Grandma," Tyler called out, his handsome face, so like his grandfather's, twisted with cruel amusement. 1 week later, we sat in the living room, the evening news flickering on the television. "Dangerous Gen Z pranks targeting the elderly," announced the anchor. And suddenly there I was, sprawled on the ground, my fear broadcast for all to see. "Turn it off," I whispered. Robert, my son, my only child, sighed heavily before clicking the remote. "Mom, you're overreacting. It was just a joke. Tyler would never hurt you." Diane, his wife, didn't even look up from her phone. "The neighbors probably think we're raising a delinquent now." "I could have broken a hip," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "But you didn't," Robert replied, exasperation edging his tone. "You're fine. Stop making everything so dramatic." That night, I lay awake in my too small bedroom, once a storage closet before they renovated it for me when I moved in 5 years ago after Frank died. Voices drifted through the thin walls. "The Peaceful Pines has openings," Diane was saying. "With her pension and insurance, we could cover it and finally remodel the kitchen." "She's getting worse," Robert agreed. "The doctor said these episodes of confusion might increase." "What doctor?" I hadn't seen any doctor who said such things. "Tyler's incident might be a blessing in disguise," Diane continued. "If she's afraid of him, she might agree to the facility more easily." My throat tightened as the reality crashed over me. I wasn't family. I was an inconvenience, a resource, a problem to solve. I clutched Frank's photograph to my chest, the only possession they hadn't stored for safekeeping in the attic. "What do I do now?" I whispered to his smiling face, tears sliding down my cheeks. His eyes, forever frozen in that moment of joy, seemed to harden with determination. That night, something awakened in me, something I thought had died with Frank, something with teeth. The breakfast table fell silent when I entered the next morning. Tyler smirked behind his cereal bowl. Robert cleared his throat awkwardly, exchanging glances with Diane. "Sleep well, Mom?" Robert asked, his voice dripping with false cheerfulness. I nodded, watching them carefully. How had I missed it before? The way they spoke over me, around me, through me, as if I were already gone. "I was thinking of visiting Judith today," I said, spooning yogurt I didn't want. Judith Levine, my closest friend and a retired attorney. We'd taught at the same university for decades. "Oh, I don't think that's a good idea," Diane said quickly. "You seem tired. Why don't you rest today?" "I can drive myself." "I've been driving for 60 years, Robert chuckled. "Mom, we sold your car last year, remember? You agreed it wasn't safe anymore." I didn't remember because it never happened. My Volvo disappeared after my bout with pneumonia. "I'll call a taxi," I said, reaching for my purse. "Your phone is charging," Emma said softly. My granddaughter, the only one who still looked me in the eyes. "I'll get it." She returned with a chunky plastic device I'd never seen before. "We got you a new phone, Grandma," Tyler explained with exaggerated patience. "Simplified for seniors. No confusing internet stuff." I turned it over in my hands. No internet, no access, no Judith's number programmed in. "I think I'll rest after all," I said, retreating to my room. Later, searching through my closet for my old address book, I discovered my documents box had been organized. My financial statements were missing, my checkbook gone, my house deed from Vermont, the one Frank and I had restored during summer breaks, nowhere to be found. When confronted, Robert sighed like I was a difficult child. "Mom, we sold the Vermont house 2 years ago. You signed the papers right here." He tapped the dining table. "You were happy about it, remember? You said maintaining 2 properties was too much." "I never said that. I would never have sold our sanctuary." "Show me the paperwork," I demanded. "It's filed away at the bank," he replied smoothly. "The doctor warned us about these memory lapses. It's why we're concerned." That night, I methodically went through my room, finding evidence of systematic erasure, photos missing, books donated, clothes simplified. My life was being curated out of existence. Emma knocked softly around midnight, her young face troubled. "Grandma, are you okay? I heard you moving around." I studied her, the only one who seemed genuinely concerned. Robert's daughter, but with none of his calculating coldness. "Emma, dear," I whispered, "do you think I'm confused?" She glanced nervously down the hall before meeting my eyes. "No, Grandma. I think something's wrong, but it's not with your mind." A tiny spark of hope flickered in my chest. I wasn't alone after all. Emma slipped into my room 3 days later, clutching a tablet to her chest, her computer science textbooks tucked under her arm. "For your old TV shows," she whispered, showing me how to use the device. "Hide it when Dad comes in." The weight of the tablet in my hands felt like freedom. For 40 years, I'd taught American literature to college students, keeping pace with changing technology. Before moving in with Robert, I'd managed my investments online, taught virtual seminars, wrote articles on digital education. They'd erased that woman, replacing her with a helpless caricature of senility. I waited until the house was silent before powering on the tablet. The blue light illuminated my determined face as I reacquainted myself with the digital world. A week later, Emma rushed in after her programming class, excited to show me family photos she'd digitized. Her laptop whirred between us on the bed as she scrolled through images of Frank and me in younger days. "Dad has a meeting and Mom's at book club," she said. "Tyler's out with friends. We have 2 hours." A knock at the front door startled her. "That's my study group." She hurried out, leaving her laptop open, logged into her accounts. My hands trembled as I moved to close it. Then I noticed she had access to the family's shared cloud storage, a digital archive Robert had created for important family documents. Emma had mentioned once that her father insisted everyone use it for security purposes. I hesitated only briefly before opening it. The evidence was there, carefully categorized in Robert's methodical filing system. Scanned copies of my financial records, emails he'd printed and saved between himself and Westbrook Bank. Documentation of my supposed cognitive decline, fabricated doctor's notes from a Dr. Mercer I'd never met. Most damning, letters to my brother George about his will, suggesting I was no longer capable of managing inheritance due to advancing dementia. I worked quickly, using Emma's tablet to photograph the screen, document by document. I couldn't forward them. It would leave a digital trail, but I could preserve the evidence. I carefully closed the cloud storage and shut the laptop just as Emma returned. Her eyes widened, seeing the tablet in my hands. "Grandma, I found evidence," I whispered. "In the family cloud storage. Robert's been planning this for months." Instead of shock or denial, she sat beside me, taking my gnarled hand in her smooth one. "I suspected something," she confessed. "Dad's been acting strange about finances. I overheard him telling Mom that your accounts needed consolidation for efficiency. That's why I brought you the tablet." Why would he do this? The question that had haunted my sleepless nights. Dad lost money in some crypto investment. A lot of money. She stared at her lap. And the house has multiple mortgages now. The betrayal cut deeper than I imagined possible. Not just financial exploitation, but the calculated dismantling of my autonomy. "Emma, I need to contact Judith Levine. Can you help me?" She nodded, determination hardening her young features. "I'll do better than that. I'll help you fight back." As footsteps approached down the hall, we quickly hid the tablet. Robert appeared, smiling blandly. "Everything okay in here? Taking another trip down memory lane?" I matched his smile with practiced docility, just remembering better days. In that moment, I made a decision. They wanted a confused old woman? I would give them one. A performance so convincing they would never see the storm gathering behind my faded blue eyes. Dr. Harris studied my test results, his forehead creased with concern. Robert shifted impatiently in the plastic chair beside me. "Mom's episodes are getting worse," he informed the doctor. "She's paranoid, hiding things, accusing family members of stealing." Dr. Harris nodded professionally. "Mrs. Foster, would you mind if I speak with you alone for a few minutes? Standard procedure." Robert hesitated. "She gets confused without me." "Just 5 minutes," the doctor insisted. When the door closed behind my son, I straightened in my chair. The confused shuffle vanished from my posture. "He's stealing everything," I said quietly. "My home, my money, my dignity." Dr. Harris leaned forward. "I've noticed discrepancies in what your son reports and what I observe in our sessions. Your cognitive tests are excellent for any age. I need your help, I whispered, sliding a paper with Judith's contact information across his desk. My friend is a retired attorney. Could you contact her for me? They monitor my calls. He studied the note thoughtfully. Making such a call would be unusual. I'd need to verify this attorney's credentials first, and I'll need more evidence before taking any action that could impact family relationships. I respected his caution. Will you at least document my mental capacity independently? I fear they're building a case against me. He nodded, tucking the note away. I'll create a sealed assessment and consider contacting Ms. Levine after verifying her credentials. When Robert returned, I resumed my performance of mild confusion. That evening, Emma confirmed Dr. Harris had verified Judith's background and made contact. My plan was taking shape, albeit slowly. 3 days later, after a carefully arranged medical equipment consultation, I met Patrick Sullivan, a former prosecutor specializing in elder abuse cases. Judith had connected us through Dr. Harris. Mrs. Foster, he said once we were alone in my room, what you're describing follows a concerning pattern I've seen too often. But building a case requires methodical documentation. His weathered face hardened as I showed him the evidence collected on Emma's tablet. The car incident might constitute reckless endangerment. The financial manipulation suggests fraud. But we need more before confronting them directly. He made notes in a small pad. Can you maintain this charade while we gather evidence? I nodded, strength flowing back into my bones. I was a literature professor for 40 years, Mr. Sullivan. I can play any character required. Call me Patrick, and we should visit your brother George soon. His testimony could be crucial. 2 days later, Emma drove me to Massachusetts General Hospital where George was undergoing treatment. His once robust frame had withered, but his sharp eyes brightened seeing me. Ellie, he whispered as Emma tactfully stepped outside. Robert said you weren't well enough to visit. Robert has been lying about many things, I replied, taking his skeletal hand. His laugh turned into a cough. I suspected as much. He's been pushing me to change my will. Says you need expensive care that would eat up any inheritance. Did you believe him? George squeezed my hand. Enough to play along while I made different arrangements with another lawyer. Half to you, half to a trust for Emma's education. That girl has your spirit. Tears welled in my eyes. They're trying to erase me, George. Then write yourself back into existence, he replied fiercely. You've never let anyone silence you before. Don't start now. We found something interesting in Mom's old records, Robert announced at dinner, failing to hide the gleam in his eyes. Apparently, Dad set up some Swiss account years ago, for tax purposes. I stirred my untouched soup, avoiding Emma's warning glance. Did he? I murmured. Frank was always careful with finances. Any idea how much might be there? Diane asked, too casually. I frowned, feigning confusion. Maybe $500,000? He mentioned diversification once. Tyler nearly choked on his drink. Robert and Diane exchanged naked looks of calculation. The bait was taken, though I knew Robert would verify before fully committing. Frank had indeed maintained international investments, but nothing like what I'd implied. Patrick's plan was progressing. Create a financial distraction while building our case. Make them overreach, get sloppy, expose their true intentions. Marina Campos, the investigative reporter Patrick had cautiously introduced after 3 meetings, discovered Robert's desperate financial situation through public records and carefully cultivated sources. Failed cryptocurrency investments, mounting credit card debt, multiple mortgages on the house. They're accelerating their timeline, Patrick warned during our monthly medical checkup, our cover for meetings. We need more documentation of their intentions. That night, Emma helped implement the next phase. With her technical knowledge, she installed a monitoring app on her father's computer, something she could justify as a school project if discovered. It would capture screenshots whenever financial terms or my name appeared in documents. I don't like spying on Dad, she admitted. But after what I've seen, I understand your conflict, I assured her. We're not doing this out of vengeance, but protection. The next morning, Robert discovered me trying to call a taxi. Where do you think you're going, Mom? He demanded, snatching the phone. My house, I said, allowing tears to flow. In Vermont. I want to go home. We sold that house. Remember? You live here now. No, I cried, loud enough for the neighbors to hear through open windows. You stole it! You stole everything! Robert grabbed my arm, fingers digging painfully into thin skin that bruises easily. You're confused, he hissed. You need help. On cue, Mrs. Peterson from next door appeared at the door. "Everything okay?" I heard shouting. Robert transformed instantly, concerned son personified. "Just a difficult morning. Mom's having one of her episodes." "I'm not confused," I insisted, letting my voice quaver. "He's taking everything." Mrs. Peterson's eyes narrowed slightly. "Perhaps she should see a doctor?" "Already scheduled," Robert assured her smoothly. "In fact, I think we'll go today instead of waiting for next week." Perfect. The accelerated timeline was in motion. While Robert made phone calls, Emma slipped me my medication, not the sedatives they thought I was taking, but vitamins she'd been substituting for weeks. "Dr. Mercer agreed to see you this afternoon," Robert announced triumphantly. "And I've scheduled a tour of Peaceful Pines for tomorrow." "What's happening?" I asked, playing my role. "Where are you taking me?" "To someone who can help you, Mom. You're not well." As he guided me to the car, I glanced back at the house. Emma stood in the window, phone to her ear, alerting Patrick to the change in plans. Dr. Mercer's office smelled of antiseptic and expensive cologne. His diplomas lined wood-paneled walls, impressive credentials for a man Patrick had discovered was facing disciplinary review for 3 questionable competency rulings. "Mrs. Foster," he began, glancing at Robert beside me, "your son tells me you've been experiencing confusion and paranoia." I gazed at him with carefully cultivated vulnerability. "Sometimes I get lost in memories." "She accused me of stealing her money," Robert interjected, "and she doesn't remember selling her Vermont property." Dr. Mercer nodded sympathetically. "Let's run through some standard assessments." I performed precisely as Patrick had coached, answering some questions with perfect clarity, others with strategic hesitation, drawing complex shapes with small deliberate errors, recalling 3 objects after 5 minutes, but forgetting 1 after 10. "I need to use the restroom," I announced halfway through. "I'll help you," Robert offered quickly. "I'm not an invalid yet," I snapped with convincing irritation. "I can still manage a toilet alone." Dr. Mercer directed me to the hallway bathroom. As we'd anticipated, he stepped out to review notes with Robert, leaving his office momentarily unattended. I moved quickly, retrieving the envelope Emma had hidden in my cardigan. Inside, documentation of Dr. Mercer's pending ethics investigations, statements from former patients' families, and a letter from Patrick outlining potential criminal charges for fraudulent competency declarations. I placed it prominently on his keyboard before using the bathroom as promised. When I returned, Dr. Mercer was scanning the documents, his face ashen. "Mr. Foster," he said when we resumed, "I'll need to conduct additional cognitive assessments before making any determination. Perhaps neuroimaging and a second opinion would be prudent." Robert's jaw tightened. "We discussed this already. My mother needs immediate intervention." "Medicine requires thoroughness, Doctor," Mercer replied stiffly. "I can't recommend guardianship proceedings based on today's evaluation alone." In the car afterward, Robert gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. "We're still touring Peaceful Pines tomorrow. You'll see how nice it is." I gazed out the window, watching familiar streets pass. "Your father was disappointed when you dropped out of college to pursue that get-rich-quick scheme." "What?" He swerved slightly. "Just remembering," I murmured. "You remind me of my father sometimes. He tried to control everything, too. Even tried to prevent me from attending university to keep control of my inheritance." Robert's breathing quickened. "You're confused again." "Perhaps," I conceded. "Memory is such a fragile thing. Or such a powerful one." That evening, while Robert made agitated phone calls in his study, Emma helped me pack a small overnight bag. "Everything's ready," she whispered. "Patrick contacted Peaceful Pines. The director understands the situation." "And your mother?" Emma's eyes hardened. "Mom's more involved than I realized. I found emails showing she's been researching how to sell your jewelry collection." I nodded, unsurprised. Diane had always been Robert's willing accomplice, though careful to maintain plausible deniability. "What about you?" I asked, stroking her cheek. "This will change everything." "You taught me about integrity when I was little," she replied. "Remember the story about the emperor's new clothes? How only the child was brave enough to speak the truth?" I smiled, recalling reading her that tale on countless evenings while Robert and Diane attended their social functions. "Sometimes family isn't who you're born to," I told her. "It's who stands beside you when truth costs something." Susan Miller, director of Peaceful Pines, greeted us in the marble-floored lobby. Her handshake lingered on mine, a silent communication. "Mr. Foster, Why don't you explore our community room while I show your mother our standard intake procedure? It's protocol to speak with prospective residents privately. Robert hesitated. My mother gets anxious alone. I'll manage, I assured him meekly. You've made all the other decisions. Once inside her office, Susan's professional smile transformed into determined efficiency. Mrs. Foster, Patrick Sullivan contacted me yesterday. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence he provided, and if accurate, it's deeply concerning. Are you prepared to proceed with the intervention? I nodded, abandoning my confused facade. Completely. She made a quick call. Within minutes, Dr. Harris arrived through a side entrance. Perfect timing, he announced. I have a medical transport ready. Mrs. Foster appears to be experiencing concerning symptoms that require immediate hospital evaluation. When we returned to the lobby, I leaned heavily on Dr. Harris, my breath deliberately labored. Robert, I gasped, clutching my chest theatrically. What's happening? He demanded, rushing forward. Possible TIA, Dr. Harris explained, using the medical term for a mini-stroke. I'm admitting her to Memorial immediately for evaluation. I'll come with you, Robert insisted. Please follow in your car, Dr. Harris countered smoothly. We need to move quickly. The ambulance whisked me away. Sirens silent but lights flashing. Through the rear window, I watched Robert's face contort with frustrated calculation. At Memorial Hospital, the real work began. Not medical treatment. I was perfectly healthy. But the final assembly of our legal counterattack. Patrick met me in a private room, accompanied by a neurologist colleague who conducted and documented a comprehensive cognitive assessment. Every test confirmed what we already knew. My mind was sharp as ever. The bank records are still being processed, Patrick explained. Financial subpoenas take time, but the evidence from Emma's monitoring app shows Robert researching signs of dementia and involuntary commitment procedures last night. And George's will? Being finalized tomorrow. His attorney will visit the hospital directly. A text from Emma confirmed the first piece. Robert had rushed home to retrieve documents for the Peaceful Pines residency agreement, finding police officers with a narrow search warrant for specific financial documents. The officers can only take what's explicitly listed in the warrant, Patrick explained. But it will rattle him, make him worry about what we know. I closed my eyes briefly, the weight of what we'd set in motion pressing on my chest. This wasn't triumph yet, just the necessary destruction before rebuilding could begin. Robert will come here next, I predicted, to try controlling the narrative. Patrick nodded. We're ready. We didn't wait long. Robert burst into my hospital room, face flushed with barely contained panic. What the hell is going on? He demanded. There are police at our house. I sat up in the hospital bed, dropping all pretense of confusion or frailty. They're investigating the money you stole from me, I stated calmly. The accounts you drained, the property you sold by forging my signature. He blanched. You're confused. This is exactly why you need supervision. Is that what you told Tyler before he terrorized me with his car? Is that what you told Dr. Mercer when you arranged to have me declared incompetent? No one will believe you, he hissed. Desperation replacing calculation. You're just a confused old woman. The detective's recorder blinked red on the hospital table between us. Robert had been escorted to another room for questioning, leaving me with Officer Martinez, a specialist in elder financial crimes. Mrs. Foster, she began gently, can you tell me when you first suspected your son was exploiting you financially? I recounted everything chronologically. The systematic isolation, the manipulation, the gaslighting about my cognitive state. After Frank died, I was vulnerable, I admitted. Grief clouded my judgment. By the time I realized what was happening, Robert had control of everything. Martinez nodded sympathetically. Unfortunately, this pattern is common. Perpetrators often isolate victims from friends, medical professionals, and financial resources. I taught American literature for 4 decades, I said, straightening my shoulders. I specialized in unreliable narrators and stories of identity. I should have recognized what was happening in my own home. Financial exploitation by family members is particularly difficult to identify because of the trust involved, she assured me. You're not alone in this experience. Our conversation was interrupted by commotion in the hallway. Tyler's voice carried through the door. This is bullshit! I didn't assault anyone! Martinez excused herself. Through the partially open door, I glimpsed my grandson, handcuffed, being led to another room. His normally confident posture had collapsed into sullen fear. Emma slipped in during the disruption, her face drawn with exhaustion. Tyler's friends turned over the original car video, she reported. The one where they clearly planned the whole thing as a test to see how you'd react under stress. The detective is treating it as evidence of premeditated assault. And your mother? They're questioning her separately. She's claiming she was just following Dad's lead, that she didn't understand the extent of what was happening. I sighed. That fits her pattern. Diane always maintained plausible deniability while benefiting from Robert's schemes. Emma nodded sadly. I found records of her researching retirement communities months before they started talking to you about them. I closed my eyes briefly. This family is fracturing beyond repair. No, Emma contradicted firmly. This family was broken when they decided to exploit you instead of honor you. What's happening now is justice. Patrick returned with Dr. Harris, both wearing expressions of cautious optimism. The initial financial investigation confirms unauthorized transfers from your accounts, Patrick reported. The bank has frozen further activity pending the investigation. What happens now? I asked. The legal process will take time, Patrick cautioned. Criminal investigations, especially financial ones, proceed slowly. Robert will likely be released pending charges once the initial questioning is complete. And Tyler? That depends on whether you want to pursue assault charges for the car incident. I considered this. Remembering the terror as the car rushed toward me, the humiliation of my fall broadcast on local news. I want accountability, I said finally, but also restoration. Tyler is young. There's still hope for him to learn and change. Patrick nodded. We can recommend diversion with mandatory community service at a senior center, plus restitution. What about me? I asked the question that had haunted me for months. Where will I go when this is over? I've been researching senior apartments, Emma offered. Places with independence but support available if needed. And financially? The fear of poverty at my age was real. That's part of the legal process, Patrick explained. Asset recovery takes time, but with George's bequest and eventual restitution, you should be secure. A knock at the door interrupted us. Robert entered, escorted by an officer. His lawyer had apparently arranged a supervised visit. Mom, he began, voice honeyed with false concern. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I've only ever wanted what's best for you. I met his gaze steadily. Robert, I changed your diapers. I helped you with homework every night. I nursed you through chickenpox and heartbreaks. I paid for your education with money I earned teaching night classes after your father died. His confident mask slipped slightly. How did we get here? I asked quietly. When did I transform from your mother into an inconvenience, to be managed, then erased? The legal system moves with glacial deliberation. In the 6 months following my hospitalization, I established a new life, while the courts processed the evidence against Robert. My small apartment in Riverside Seniors Community became a sanctuary. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with windows overlooking a community garden. Most importantly, a door with my own key, locks no one else controlled. Emma visited daily at first, helping arrange my salvaged belongings and technology. A new laptop, a proper smartphone. Reconnection to the world Robert had systematically cut me off from. Judith became my regular lunch companion, her legal mind helping navigate the complexities of recovery. The prosecutor is still building the case against Robert, she explained over tea. Financial crimes require extensive documentation. They're tracking transactions going back 3 years. And Tyler? The juvenile court approved the diversion program. He's doing 20 hours weekly at Oakwood Senior Center plus therapy. I nodded, relieved yet sorrowful. Have you seen him there? Once, Judith admitted. He looked different, less entitled. The director says he's actually connecting with some of the residents. Recovery of my financial assets proved complicated. Some were gone forever, lost to Robert's failed investments. Others remained tied up in legal proceedings. But George's bequest provided immediate security, and the senior apartment was affordable with my restored Social Security and pension. Diane filed for divorce, claiming Robert's criminal activities blindsided her. The evidence Emma had gathered showed otherwise. Diane had been aware of and benefited from the exploitation, though less actively involved than Robert. Marina's investigative series on elder financial exploitation brought wider attention to the issue. Without using our names, she highlighted how families can systematically erase an elder's autonomy through isolation and manipulation. The responses surprised me. Dozens of emails from readers sharing similar experiences, thanking Marina for exposing this hidden epidemic. "Would you consider speaking to some of these people?" Marina asked during one of our interviews. "Many feel so alone in their experiences." Thus began our monthly support group. 10 of us initially, meeting in the Riverside Community Room. Elders who had faced exploitation, now reclaiming their voices and dignity. Martha, whose daughter emptied her accounts while serving as power of attorney. James, whose grandson stole his identity to open credit cards. Sophia, whose family tried having her declared incompetent after she refused to sign over her house. "You gave us a template for fighting back," Martha told me, her arthritic hands clasping mine. "Before hearing your story, I thought I was alone in my shame." "There should be no shame in being victimized," I reminded her. "The shame belongs solely to those who exploit trust." The irony wasn't lost on me. After decades teaching literature about voice and agency, I found myself leading workshops on practical matters, securing financial documents, recognizing manipulation tactics, building support networks outside family. Robert, released on bail while awaiting trial, attempted contact through increasingly desperate messages. "He says the house is being foreclosed," Emma reported during one visit. "He wants to negotiate. What does he expect me to do?" I asked, genuinely curious about his reasoning. "Save him," she replied simply, "like you always did before." I considered this while watering my small collection of potted herbs. The basil and thyme that had begun as withered stems now flourished in the sunlight. "Some things can't be saved," I said finally, "and some things shouldn't be. The court finds the defendant guilty on all counts of financial exploitation of an elder, fraud, forgery, and misuse of power of attorney." The judge's pronouncement echoed in the silent courtroom. 18 months after my hospitalization, justice arrived in the form of a 3-minute statement. Robert, once imposing in his executive suits, seemed diminished in court-mandated attire. He didn't look at me when the sentence was announced: 5 years probation, restitution of $342,000, community service, and permanent prohibition from serving as fiduciary for any person. No jail time, but something more meaningful to a man like my son: public humiliation and financial accountability. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered with microphones and cameras. Marina stood slightly apart, respectful of boundaries we'd established months earlier when collaborating on her book about elder financial protection. "Mrs. Foster, how do you feel about the verdict?" called a young journalist. I paused, considering my words carefully. Emma squeezed my hand in support. "Today isn't about feelings," I replied. "It's about accountability. Financial exploitation of elders is a hidden epidemic in this country. If my case helps one person recognize the warning signs and seek help, then something meaningful has emerged from this pain." Patrick guided me through the crowd to a waiting car. "You've become quite the advocate," he observed as we drove away. "The support group has tripled in size." "People need to know they're not alone," I said simply. "That their stories matter." My new life had found unexpected purpose. The support group evolved into a formal organization, Elders with Voice. We provided peer counseling, financial literacy workshops, and community education about exploitation warning signs. The apartment became a hub of activity, Emma helping create educational materials, Judith providing legal guidance, Marina connecting us with media outlets interested in our mission. At 85, I found myself busier than I'd been in decades. The university invited me to guest lecture on elder rights in their social work program. Adult Protective Services requested training sessions for their staff. One autumn afternoon, as golden light filtered through my windows, a hesitant knock interrupted my preparation for a presentation. Tyler stood in the hallway, thinner and somehow older than his 21 years. The arrogant teenager was gone, replaced by a young man with wary eyes and uncertain posture. "Grandma," he said, the word catching in his throat. "I wasn't sure you'd see me." I studied him, noting the community service vest from Oakwood Senior Center. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "I just made tea." He perched awkwardly on the edge of my sofa, declining refreshments. "I completed the diversion program," he began. "But I kept volunteering at Oakwood. I'm working there part-time now, while taking community college classes." I nodded, waiting. "I wanted to apologize," he continued, eyes fixed on his hands. "Not just for the car incident, but for everything before that. For seeing you as less than a person. What changed? I asked, genuinely curious. At Oakwood, I met Mr. Simmons, former history professor. Brilliant mind trapped in a body that's failing him. Tyler looked up finally. He taught me chess, tells incredible stories about civil rights marches he participated in, makes me laugh with his terrible jokes. He swallowed hard. One day I realized, this is what I almost missed with you. This is what Dad taught me to throw away. I felt the hard shell around my heart crack slightly. Have you spoken with your father? Tyler nodded. He's struggling with the restitution payments, working delivery jobs since no company will hire him in finance anymore. And your mother? Living with her sister in Connecticut. She's taking accounting classes. I never planned to become an activist at 85, I told the audience, my voice carrying clearly through the university auditorium. I simply refused to be erased. 2 years after the court verdict, my memoir, co-written with Marina, had become required reading in elder law and social work programs nationwide. Today's lecture was my 4th this month. Financial exploitation of elders is particularly devastating because it combines economic harm with profound emotional betrayal, I continued. When the perpetrator is family, the victim often suffers in silence, trapped between self-preservation and family loyalty. The standing room-only crowd included students, professionals, and community members. In the front row sat Emma, now a cybersecurity specialist developing software to protect seniors from financial scams. Beside her, Judith beamed with pride. More surprising were the figures in the back. Tyler, now working full-time at Oakwood while finishing his degree in gerontology, and beside him, after months of hesitation and 2 canceled appointments, Robert. My son had completed his probation, paid the court-ordered restitution, and repeatedly requested reconciliation. Today marked the first time I'd agreed to his presence at a public event. The question I'm asked most frequently, I continued, is whether I've forgiven my family. The answer isn't simple. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, but a process that requires accountability, changed behavior, and time. I made brief eye contact with Robert, whose face remained carefully neutral. Some relationships can be rebuilt after exploitation. Others cannot. What matters most is that elders reclaim their autonomy to make those choices freely, without manipulation or pressure. After the lecture, supporters clustered around, sharing stories and asking questions. I noticed Robert hanging back, uncertain of his welcome. Eventually, the crowd thinned, leaving just family in the empty auditorium. You spoke beautifully, Grandma, Emma said, embracing me. Professor Williams wants to develop a full course around your work. Not bad for a woman they tried to declare incompetent, Judith added with satisfaction. Tyler approached cautiously, our relationship still navigating new boundaries. The Oakwood residents would love if you'd come speak to our community group. I'd be happy to, I agreed, watching Robert over Tyler's shoulder. Emma sensed the tension. We'll get the car ready, she said, guiding Tyler and Judith toward the exit. Robert remained motionless until we were alone, then moved slowly forward. You look well, he offered awkwardly. I am well, I confirmed. The memoir publication has been more successful than anticipated. He nodded, searching for words. I've been attending the therapy sessions, as required by the court. And it's revealing patterns I didn't recognize before. Behaviors I learned from my grandfather, his treatment of my grandmother. He met my eyes briefly. It doesn't excuse anything I did. No, I agreed. It doesn't. We stood in uncomfortable silence, mother and son separated by betrayal, yet bound by decades of complicated history. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, he said finally. I'm not sure you should, but I am sorry, Mom. Truly sorry. I studied him, looking for the boy who once brought me wildflowers and asked for extra bedtime stories. The young man who helped care for Frank during his final illness. The father who taught Emma to ride a bicycle with endless patience. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your journey might inspire another queen.